Hi, welcome to Healthy Alternatives, where we explore complementary and alternative medicine, as well as other lifestyle choices that promote and enhance human health. Our guest tonight is one of our favorite alternative medical practitioners, Edwin Brown, licensed acupuncturist. Hello, Edwin.
Hi.
And tonight we're not really going to be discussing acupuncture per se.
No, we're going to be discussing
Exercise.
the exercise and the yin and yang aspects of exercise.
So tell us, what do you mean by that, Edwin, the yin and yang of exercise?
So many years ago I was working with a patient, and I, in the process of discussing her particular case, this was a woman who had come in and was trying to become pregnant, had difficulty after trying for about a year. And so one of the things that I do on my intake form is I asked, what exercises do you currently do? And so she was very fit, very low body fat, which may have also contributed to her particular situation.
And that's why a lot of people exercise. You know, they don't want that body fat.
Exactly. So she was doing all the right things as far as exercise is concerned with regards to having a very specific body type, which was very lean, very strong. She was in fantastic shape, but when I started to think about it, it dawned on me that a lot of the exercises that she did seemed to be more oriented to promoting yang energy.
And could you just repeat for us yin and yang? Yang energy is?
Right, so one of the things that when we classify yin and yang is we classify yin as being closely related to night, yang closely related to day. Yin is more cold in nature, yang is more hot in nature. And so from that perspective and thinking of it in terms of looking at the particular exercises she was doing, I realized that a lot of the exercises she was doing were pushing. And yang is very much about pushing. Mm-hmm. Yin is about pulling, it's about retreating.
Oh, okay.
And so some of the exercises that we do in the gym, for instance, tend to be more yang in nature. They're more aggressive. They're more, you think about, being hard. Mm-hmm. And, when we think of being powerful in the West, we tend to think about, upper body strength. We think about the perfect physique is having broad shoulders and a very tiny waist. Whereas in the East, they think about just the opposite. They think about having a small, slender upper body and very powerful lower body. Mm. So if you think of it in terms of triangles, the Western model is more a triangle where you have the base at the top, the broad shoulders, and a narrow waist. Okay, whereas in more Eastern countries, you have a very small top with powerful hips, glutes, thighs, and calf muscles. And so you think of the base of the point of the triangle being in the center and going out this way.
So it seems like it would be more stable.
It's more stable. Many times in my own practices, whether it was in Tai Chi or Judo, I was told, you need to have more power in your legs. Not necessarily that you need to have stronger legs, because as a swimmer in high school, I developed pretty strong legs. But the difference was that the emphasis was not on the legs as much as it was on the upper body strength. And so when I was discussing this particular case with the patient, it dawned on me that she was very yang in nature, and the exercises she was doing was promoting that energy.
So she was becoming energetically unbalanced.
That's right. And so one of the things that we talked about with her was giving her more yin style exercises.
And I think that's an interesting kind of departure from our attitudes towards exercise. I mean, we think it's fitness, and things are very important, but this whole energy balance and equilibrium can be achieved through our movements.
That's right. And one of the things that I want to emphasize as far as yin and yang is that exercise is just like anything else in life. They're neither purely yang or purely yin. There's always a combination, but the tendency of the exercise is either towards yang or towards yin. Now, this is an idea that I've developed on my own through many discussions with some of the patients, some of the cases that I've seen, through my own experiences in being physically active, all the way from when I was in little leagues, through swim team, through karate and judo and tai chi, and so I went in yoga, and I went from a very sort of
sounds yangy
Western model through understanding that there was a softness to strength, and there was a strength in softness, as well as a softness in strength. One of the earliest philosophers in China, Lao Tzu, in the 5th century BC, maybe even, I think it was in the 5th century BC. I might be wrong about the dates, but he was one of the earliest philosophers. He talked about the softest thing in the universe quickly overcomes the hardest thing. It was this concept of yin being embracing and yin being soft and having a strength within that. Quite often in dojos all across Japan, when they're practicing swords, they use bamboo, because bamboo is a type of wood that has flexibility. But in the hands of a skilled practitioner, you take that flexibility and it acts like a whip. And that whip at the very end of it is where the energy is concentrated. And that's how you get energy through softness and a concentrated energy in such a way that it becomes a very powerful energy.
Right, so we're not talking about softness here like oozy.
No, we're not talking about softness as a, someone
like
who's kind of
mushy,
like...
right.
We're talking about a firm...
kind of a flexibility.
Right. Flexibility, there's a firm...
And an absorbing of energy and then maybe a releasing it?
Well, that's breathing. And that's one of the core principles of a lot of the more balanced principles or more balanced exercise disciplines. And so one of the things that I have come to appreciate are disciplines like Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga, because they have a very good balance of yin and yang. The breathing, for instance, as you just noted, has both components. You have the inhaling and you have the exhaling. You have the receiving, you have the giving, the taking in and the letting go. And that's at the core of all these disciplines. And so one of the things that emphasizes and one of the things that does is it creates a more balanced principle or more balanced energy between the yin and the yang aspects of that particular discipline. Let's take, for instance, yoga. When you do a warrior pose, if anybody's ever done yoga and you hold a pose for 5 to 6 breath cycles, it's incredibly difficult, and it creates a lot of strength, a lot of yang, a lot of muscular strength, but because of the breathing, it also creates a sense of relaxed strength. And the difference between being strong and overly tight versus being weak and not having any strength, you don't want either case. What you want is a combination of the two. Quite often, the example that's given in sword work, for instance, is to hold the sword as if you were to hold a little bird in your hands. If you squeeze, then you will, crush the bird. If you are too loose, then the bird flies away. You have to have a relaxed firmness. A baby's grip is the perfect example. A newborn, a 2-3-month-old child, when he or she grabs your finger, their little hand just sort of holds on, and it's sometimes hard to get your hand back, get your finger back. And it's because their entire body is participating in that grip. There's no isolation of muscles. There's no, I've got big bulging biceps and so therefore I'm strong. It's a relaxed firmness. And it's the perfect example of a balance of yin and yang.
And as you're sitting here talking, I'm even thinking of course, how that imbalance affects our body and with injury or even just, who knows, illnesses, generally internal illnesses, but even our emotional state would be affected. Like, imagine if you were so yang, your personality is most likely going to reflect that.
One of the things that, absolutely. And one of the things that I talk to my patients about is that if I see that they're depressed, for instance, they need more yang. All right, get out and walk. Begin with that. If they're hyper, they need more yin. Okay, so it's not just in a sense of, do more yin exercise or do more yang exercise. It's also part of what I try to do for each person is to identify whether they are more yin in nature versus more yang in nature, and then suggest activities that are appropriate to helping them come back to a point of balance. And so it's important to not just discard what you're doing, and everybody go off and do yoga, because quite frankly, yoga is not going to be for everybody.
Right.
Neither is Tai Chi. But at the same time, you have to identify whether your particular exercise routine is more yang in nature or more yin in nature, and then you try to find a balance between the two. So a quick example of that is a patient that goes in and runs on the treadmill for 45 minutes, and then gets off the treadmill and then goes and lifts weights for another hour. All right, that's a lot of pushing, a lot of this.
That sounds like a lot of yang.
Exactly. And so what I recommend to that patient is, okay, maybe take 10 minutes off of your workout routine and take that last 10 minutes and do some stretching, some breathing and some stretching. And mentally what it does is it cools you down, because if you're always going, it has a tendency to create a mental state of mind that is more going. Quite often, when I was in my early 20s, I spent about 2 years of my life living in the gym, basically 4 or 5 days a week, 3 hours at a time. I was a lot bigger, and the concept in the gym was, how much could you press, how much could you lift, and
that was that whole era. Was very sort of around the body and lifting. And
yeah. I mean, we spent a good friend of mine and I, we spent two full years, and at the end of it, I was certainly much bigger, and I've learned a lot of things about exercise through that experience, and I've learned that weightlifting is a very important and can be an excellent type of exercise. But I also remember that when I stopped doing exercise, was when I started participating in judo, because I was top heavy. The guys that were half my size were running circles around me, knocking me down, and I kept getting frustrated because I thought, I'm strong. Why should I not be able to handle these guys? Right. It was because I had absolutely most of the focus and up at that point had been in the upper body. Now I'm naturally more muscular in the upper body anyway, so that's kind of what I went with. But rather than identifying the fact that maybe continuing to focus more strength into the legs was a better choice, I kind of went with what felt already natural to me. And that's a very common thing for people to do. So one of the things that I realized was that I needed to come back more into the yin aspect of exercise. And so I stopped lifting weights. I probably lost about 15 to 20 pounds. And I just felt much better. Shirts. Yeah, I felt much better. I still got knocked down in judo and Tai Chi, but that was for another reason. But years later, what I've discovered is that as we get older, it is very important and critical to have a balance of exercise. Because the same guys that I used to lift weights with that continue to lift weights, I ran into a few of them 10 years afterwards. And I think maybe out of 10 or 12 guys that were in this group of us that used to lift weights together, I think maybe 9 or 10 of them had shoulder surgery.
Well, I think, that is like the old jock syndrome, especially for people my age in our mid-50s. It's like, where everybody's going in for their joint replacements.
Right, yeah. And I think that the mentality that comes with that type of exercise is very yang. Thinking back on that time, a lot of the conversations that we were having, a lot of the things that we were doing, and a lot of that was an expression of where we were naturally, because in your late teens, early 20s,
well, you have a lot of energy,
pure yang,
right? Not
pure, but there's a lot of yang energy there, and so you sort of tend to go with that. But in the hands of a skilled teacher, you can temper that yang so that as you get older, you settle into yourself more firmly. You develop a sense of understanding how not to always exude that energy.
Right. And, I think that is truly, just speaking for myself, a valuable lesson.
Yep, absolutely.
Because, just the stress alone and your productivity, it really is all about balance. And I think I'm very excited to see what you have to offer us tonight, Edwin, because I don't think that we look at exercise as a way to maintain balance. We look upon it as a way to maintain a level of fitness and cardiac and our weight and so
and those are important things.
And but yes, they're very, very important because that's part of who we are. But this whole idea of balance, which I think I've come to appreciate through, our talks on the air, and I'm a patient of yours. It's really helped my life. I just feel better.
Oh, good.
It's like an awareness of what I'm doing and why, and if I feel myself being pulled maybe too far one way, I can sort of right myself.
And that's I think critical, is becoming aware of those imbalances. And as it pertains to exercise, I think that a lot of people will already identify areas where they're imbalanced. For instance, if they lift too much weight and then they're sorer than they should be, they know that they've probably pushed beyond where they should be. The two things that I hope to accomplish tonight is to give people a sense of trying to take a look at what their exercise routine is, and identifying whether they tend to do things that are always about pushing, going, and then try to temper that with a little bit of breathing and stretching, so that it's more about slowing down maybe at the end of your exercise. If on the other side there is no exercise, then you've got to get going. All right, you've already got the yin part down really well, but you need to do a little bit more of the yang aspect. And then the other thing I wanted to do tonight was to demonstrate the routine that I learned to warm up the body for judo, as well as some other things that I learned from Tai Chi.
And you do this just as like something you do every day to maintain flexibility and balance?
Every morning I wake up and I do this set of exercises, because I realize that what it does for the body is it helps to loosen up the joints. It's not about stretching to become more flexible.
Okay.
It's about stretching to establish normal range of motion.
Okay.
All right, and I want to emphasize that, because as I'll demonstrate, there's some things in there that if you're not too flexible, you may want to be very careful with. Certainly not, I wouldn't recommend that anybody just, tomorrow begin to do this unless you're already pretty fit and you want to try this. But if you have certain, musculoskeletal issues, it might be best to try to strengthen those joints. Now, there are some things that you can do that everybody can do as part of this routine, and that circling of the joints is probably the single most important thing to begin with if you have any musculoskeletal issues. Okay. So I'll demonstrate the different parts of the routine. And one other thing that I'll say about the routine is that the meridian system that I think everybody is familiar with are the concept of lines of energy flowing throughout the body, and individual points along those lines that are said to access the energy of that particular meridian and how that affects the body. When we look at a healthy body, the meridians are straight. When we look at a body that is diseased or has some sort of a musculoskeletal issue, those meridians are quite often tangled. They're twisted, they cross each other, and they create these areas of stagnant energy that we call trigger points in Western medicine. And when you're able to, through breathing and stretching, straighten out those meridians, it increases the overall flow of energy. Oh, and I'll go into a little more detail when I demonstrate, but a lot of the movements are about opening up those meridians and straightening those meridians out. It begins with rotations of joints, and then there's certain movements that we do to help promote energy movement from the center. It's a great way to start the day. It's a great way to end the day. And
well, I think you should take it away.
I will. All right. I'll demonstrate. So one of the things I wanted to demonstrate was the exercise routine that I do in the morning. And it comes from the exercise routine that we did in judo, and some of it as well as from what we did in Tai Chi. Mostly it's from the judo exercise. And it's called body preparation. And it's called that for a reason, because traditionally in the martial arts, when you were engaged in practice, your entire body was going to be participating. You weren't going to be sitting down and rowing. You weren't going to be on a bike and pedaling. You were going to be doing everything from squatting to jumping to taking tumbles to throwing to taking all kinds of using all kinds of body movement. And so body preparation is an important part of warming yourself up Now, the concept is a little different in that we're not talking about warming up as in running a little bit in place, although there is some of that in this. I'll demonstrate briefly what the first step is. But even with that type of movement, with that warming up, it's more about compacting your energy into your center. Now, that's a very, very important part of this exercise, because even though it doesn't seem like there's a lot of movement going on in the center, the emphasis is always here. When I begin the exercises, I will rotate my head and I will try to demonstrate, or I'll try to talk a little bit about the connection of that type of movement to your center. There's a physiological and an energetic connection, and it's important to try to feel that, because ultimately what we're doing is developing a sense of centeredness, and we're also trying to develop a flow of energy from the upper part of the body to the lower part of the body. As we talked about earlier, the emphasis in Eastern cultures on strong lower body. It is not just about strength, physical strength, it's about energetic strength, and it's about being rooted into the ground. And there's a lot of disciplines like Qigong and Tai Chi and yoga that talk about being rooted. Now, you're not going to be able to root only half of you. You have to have the upper body and the lower body rooted into the ground. You have to have your entire body rooted into the ground. So this is a little bit more about preparing the energetic flow of the body through specific movements, which will also help to loosen up the joints in the body, loosen up the myofascial tissue in the body, and also loosen up and prepare different muscle groups. There's a sense of a rhythm to this that we're trying to build. As I stated earlier, if this is something that you think you're capable of doing because you're relatively fit, then I would encourage you to try it very carefully. If this is something that you think may not be a good idea because you have a bad knee or hip, etc., then I would concentrate on some of the circling of the joints, and maybe try to see someone about strengthening the joints so that you can ultimately try this. So again, this is about body preparation. It's not about stretching to increase range of motion. It's about trying to open up the joints to establish a normal range of motion. There's a saying in Chinese medicine that your qi, or your energy, gets stuck in the joints. And so this is why I think it's an important exercise to do on a daily basis, as far as rotating the joints, at the very least doing that, because what you're doing is distributing the synovial fluid in the joints more evenly, helping to protect cartilage, helping to slow down the deterioration of joints that will occur as we age. It's a natural part of aging, but if you can slow it down and gradually experience some of that deterioration, I think that there's a better chance that you're going to live a longer, healthier life with much less pain. And if you've had an injury, this is something that you can use to rehabilitate your whole body. Quite often when I'm working with someone, they come in for shoulder pain, I don't just do that, I want to do the entire body. I want the entire body to participate in the healing process. And this type of exercise, again, is body preparation. It's including the entire body. So I'm going to demonstrate as I'm going to talk a little bit as I demonstrate, and I will try to be as fluid as I can so that you get a sense of the rhythm. Let me briefly describe what I'll do, and then I'll go ahead and do it and talk a little bit as I'm doing it. You begin by rotating the joints, the neck, the shoulders. There's a swinging of the arms, which is going to include helping to loosen up the upper and the lower back and the hips. There's some hip rotations, there's some knee rotations, there's some squatting, which is good for balance, and also to help stretch the myofascia along the calf muscles and the plantar fascia, which a lot of people who have experienced plantar fasciitis will attest that it's a very painful condition. I know that from personal experience. And some of the things that I did during these warm-up exercises helped me to ultimately recover from that. After we do that, then there are specific stances that are about helping to open up the hips, helping to strengthen and to stretch the adductor muscles and some of the groin muscles. There's a split-like position, but it's not a true split. In fact, you're trying to open up to a specific distance between your feet. It has more to do with the energetics of it. It's about opening up the region, the perineal region, which is the root chakra in yoga. And it's about having a sense of connectedness to the earth from that perineal region through the legs and into the earth. And then we'll do some exercises on the ground, all of which are really good as far as helping to get the entire body moving, helping to get energy moving through the body. And I'll try to identify areas or parts of the exercises that are good for lower back issues, that are good for upper back, neck issues, and also good for the knees. So we'll begin with some rotations of the head, and it's a very specific number per body part. You begin by rotating the head. Always begin to the left side. So you're going to rotate looking to the left. You do 3 to the left, and then you do 3 to the right. Now you do this very gently. You don't want to rush it. If you've just woken up, this is the first activity you're doing in the morning. You're going to let the chin hang just a little bit. Look up, not too far back, just enough to get a sense of stretching right in through the platysma, just to help open up all those points in the meridians. And then you're going to look side to side. Now, because the meridians are connecting the head to the chest and ultimately to the legs, and you do 3 to either side, then you're going to do 1 big one to the left and then 1 big one to the right. Because the meridians connect the head and the neck to the torso and to your center, that type of movement, you should already start to feel a relaxation in the center. Your breathing should be focused here. It shouldn't be big breaths, but just a very gentle sense of breathing. This is as much a meditation as it is exercise. Once you've done the 3 circles, looking left to right 3 times, you finish up with 1 circle to the left, 1 circle to the right. Then you begin moving. You're stepping to the right and circling the hands to the right, stepping to the left and circling the hands forward to the left. You do that 5 times on both sides. And again, this is about trying to establish a rhythm. So one of the things that you want to be doing at this point is getting a sense of rhythm. Now, once you've done 5 to 5, you then go to the back, again, stepping to the right and then stepping to the left. And you get the sense of moving from the center. Now, at this point, your hips are also involved because what you're doing is leaving this leg behind a little bit, and it's helping to stretch very, very gently right into the psoas, the hip flexors. So once you've done 5 to the left, 5 to the right, then you do crossing. Again, stepping right and then left. You cross here, and then you cross here. Now, as you're stepping to the right, the left arm is above the right, and vice versa as you're stepping to the left. You're doing 5 to either side. Now I want to emphasize something. As you do this, the pinkies roll up just a tiny bit so that the pinky is higher than the thumb. What that does is, we talked about straightening those meridians. You're now taking, elongating, and stretching all the fascia and the meridians running all the way up into the head, as well as some of the ones through the back and into the hips. And this is a really nice, gentle, relaxed way of relaxing the upper back and the neck where we have a lot of tension. So once you've done 5 to either side, you then are going to swing the arms, and the way it was described to me is this is about polishing. Imagine that you have a very shiny stone or a pool of water in front of you. You want to just skim the water or polish it as you move across it. And you do 5 to one side, 5 to the other. And again, you're turning the pinky up just slightly to get some of the elongation in through the meridian, ultimately from the pinky all the way down to the floor. So you're going to do 5 to this side, 5 to both sides. Once you've done 5 and you're skimming the surface, you're then going to turn upward, okay? So now that surface is turned this way, and you polish it this way, and as you come to the other side, that surface turns an angle this way, and you polish it that way. And what you're doing here, again, 5 to both sides. There's a really nice rhythm to this. And once you're done with this, so it should be about 5, you have a really strong sense of energy flowing out through the fingertips. From this point, you're going to do circles, 5 again to the left, and then 5 to the right. And sometimes you'll see practitioners holding their center as they do this, because there's a sense of energy flowing through the hands back into your legs this way. Then knees together, feet together. You're going to very gently sit, trying to keep your knees and your feet touching. The heel of the palm is going to go right above the kneecap here, and you're going to do 8. Eight to the left, very gently straighten the legs out. You're not going past 90 degrees at the hips yet, okay? Again, this is not about increasing range of motion, it's about establishing normal range of motion. Very gentle stretch of the hamstrings. And then you do 8 to the other side. And quite often you'll get a nice crack in there, and that's just ligaments and tendons that are loosening up a little bit. Put a little bit of pressure just above the kneecap. Not too much so that it hurts, but just enough so that you're able to relax some of your upper body weight onto the knees. Now, the second time you do this, the knees remain a little bit bent, and now you can break 90 degrees, look at your knees, relax the upper body. You can just hang out here for a little bit. Now, from this position, you straighten up, try to keep the heels together, and then go down onto the balls of the feet. And this is a great way to practice balance. At this point, the rhythm, the energy is flowing. Really good sense of relaxation. Your mind at this point should kind of be not thinking about anything in particular, just enjoying that sense of peace. And there's a really strong sense of balance in this position. There's a saying in yoga, you raise your heart to heaven, lower your eyes to earth. And that's about correcting your posture. So this is a really good test of how much balance you have. Now, once you've done this, I usually hold this for 10 to 15 seconds. Then I'll stand up and placing my left foot forward, my right foot behind me, I make sure that my feet are at least shoulder width apart, but not too wide, not too narrow. And the front leg, knee bends slightly over the toes. You don't want to be on the inside or the outside. You don't necessarily need to be knee directly over toe, but you want to be moving in that direction. Again, your upper body is straight. Great way to open up the hip, especially for the right side. Now, this is something that if you have some hip or knee issues, you may want to avoid. You may just want to do the circling of the joints and the swinging of the arms that we just did. And then you're going to step and go to the other side. And again, this is nice and relaxed. You're not trying to stretch to increase the your muscles. Your feet should be, again, roughly shoulder width apart this way, as well as shoulder width apart that way. Just because you don't want to overdo it. This is nice and relaxed. Upper body is, the back knee is slightly bent as well. Now, from this position, what you're going to do is move slightly to the a slightly wider width. Again, knee over toe, point the toes up. Your arms should be able to straighten, relaxing on the knees. This is great to strengthen the body, the leg. Now, this is yang, okay, because it's about really trying to strengthen, but it's also within yin because you're relaxing into it. And then you go to the other side, and quite often you'll hear a little popping, and that's a good thing, as long as it doesn't hurt. If any of this hurts, by the way, please stop. Just use your judgment. Now, this next one, as I mentioned, it's not a full split. So you went from a slightly wide stance, slightly wider than your shoulders, to now this next stance, which is slightly wider. And now this next stance, which is going to be even wider. If you can hold this stance for 20 seconds or so, great. Great way to strengthen the inside of the knees. Great way to strengthen the ankles. And again, relaxing into it and breathing is very important. If you need to reach down and just relax into it, that's fine. Now, the interesting thing about this stance is that most of the weight is on the legs. You should really not feel like you're supporting yourself with your upper body. Now, turning to the left, the back toes dig into the mat or to the floor, and the front toes are pointing up. This is about helping that perineal region that we talked about, that root chakra, open up so that you get a connection of energy flow from the back leg to the front leg. And if you want to just very gently press your hand into it, it's a great stretch for the palm. Now, this is the entire body operating at once. all the energy flow. Go to the other side. Again, very gently stretch the palm on this side. You're not looking to do a split. You're not really looking to be a gymnast. You're really just looking to open up your root chakra. And then sitting on the ground, placing the bottoms of your feet together, you're going to very gently press down with your elbows. Again, remember in the yoga saying, heart to heaven, eyes to earth. Your back is as straight as possible. You lean forward, and then you tuck your chin. And you get a nice stretch that goes all the way down the back. Feet out to either side. And in this position, this is really good stretches for the lower back. I mentioned earlier that I'll try to identify areas that are good for specific ailments. That initial butterfly stretch, if you will, not sure if it's called that, but it seems like a butterfly to me, is great, especially with leaning into it to release some of the low back tension. And in this position here, you're not looking to do a straddle split, just open the legs as wide as they'll go. And what I do is I swing side to side, again, always starting with the left, going to the right. And what I imagine is my fingertips are trying to stretch forward and reach out just a little bit as I swing. That's going to create a lot of nice, gentle stretching from my hand all the way down through my back. And as I'm twisting, it's going to also bring the lower back into play here. So turning one side, then the other. Very gentle. Now we're back to 5. And then I'm going to turn all the way to one side, relax my legs, let this knee, the inside of this knee touch the ground. I'm going to look back to the right corner here, and then I'm going to lower my chest to the ground, keeping your back straight. And then back up. You can hold that for 10, 15 seconds. Great stretch for low back issues. Then you go to the other side. And again, the inside knee to the ground. You turn roughly about 45 degrees, your chest to the ground so that it keeps your back straight. Now your forehead will naturally touch, but the emphasis should be on bringing the chest straight instead of just doing this. All right, that's not going to stretch you the way it should. Keeping the back straight and lowering it this way, and then at the end looking down. Now once you've done that, again 10 to 15 seconds, I usually cross my leg here. I'm going to scoot forward because I'm going to bring my legs up and over my the back. At this point, you need to engage the abdominal muscles so that you're not putting your low back at risk while you're bringing, this is a lot of stress on the core. A lot of what we're doing is going to strengthen very gently the core. It's going to strengthen the core from a softer perspective. So that's yin within yang, if you will. So at this point, you very gently engage the abdominal muscles, and hopefully I'll have enough space back there. As I come up over the top here, my hands come with me, and I relax my hands, moving to the back. Now you can go side to side like this, or you can just simply hold it in the center. If you point your toes towards the knees, it creates a nice line of tension all the way through the glutes, the hamstrings, into the lower back. And then you're going to roll back up this way. And now from this position, there are one of two things that you can do. Again, if you're a little more fit and you want to try this, this is fine. If you're not and you want to try simply stretching and arching the back, then you can do the next movement or the next exercise. These are Japanese style push-ups. Now you go back to the width that you did earlier, okay? You reach down, put your hands on the ground here. You're gonna reach back with the hips. You're gonna tuck your head, looking to the left initially, coming up. Look to the right, then to the left, then to the right again. And if you do this relaxed, you can actually do 10 or 12 very quickly with very little effort. If you don't want to do that, simply just come down, lower the front of the hips, let them naturally lower to the ground. This is a great stretch for the abdominal region, also very good for arching and extension. As we get older, our bodies don't want to do extension, so this is an important part of the aging process, is to do something like this. Looking over to the left side, over to the right side, back up, and then sort of a modified child's pose. Relaxing here. Now there are different ways of doing that, but for the purposes of just trying to prepare your body for the day, this is a very simple one, just to do child's pose. Come back up to a squatting position. And now this is where we do a little bit more of the exercises involving more of the Tai Chi style. That's closer to the end of the judo related exercises. At that point in judo class, we would practice falling, and we would do other things that were more related to what we were going to do in the class. But one of the things that we did in Tai Chi, which I really appreciated, was stretching the entire side of the body. So reaching up, turning to one side, you inhale, exhale as you come back to the center, inhale, exhale. Now you can do 2 to either side, or you can just do 1 to one side, 1 to the left side, and then you stretch to the left, inhale as you stretch, exhale as you come back to center. And again, you can do 2 to either side. Now that stretch should be felt all the way down to the side, down to the ground. So again, you're using the entire body in the stretch, even though it seems like we're emphasizing this movement up here. Now, a great stretch activity for the lower back is called peach picking, and I do this every day. Toes pointed forward, reaching up to the center like you're picking a peach out of a tree. The side that's reaching, the heel comes up off the ground naturally. Don't push up, in other words, just let it come up naturally, like you're trying to go up onto your toes to just get a little bit more of a stretch. I usually do anywhere from 3 to 5 the side. Some mornings I'll do 10 if my back is tighter than usual for some reason. And actually try to pick. Pretend like you're picking. It does something to the flow of energy when you pretend like you're picking. And then lastly, I'll turn to one side and to the other. Great for the lower back. Energetically great for the kidneys. And then I'll also do 3 with my head looking forward, so that I get a nice relaxation on the upper and the lower back. And lastly, very gently bend my knees, and I do just the opposite of the peach picking. You're going to reach to the floor one hand at a time in this position. Again, 3 to 5, whatever you want. If you feel like 10 is more appropriate, then that's fine. And that is the end of the routine that I do every morning. At this point, I'm certainly not talking as much as I did tonight, so there's much more rhythm to it. At this point, I just always feel like I'm ready to face the day. It's a great, calm way to face the day. I've done yin, a lot of breathing, a lot of very gentle stretching. I've done yang, a lot of the positions that you hold that are static. So just a nice balance of the two. And I've also focused on all the major joints in the body. So if there was any tightness in anything, when I started, there should be less of it. And I can go throughout the day in a much more relaxed, calm way, energized yet relaxed, firm but relaxed, like the baby's grip, like holding a sword like a little bird. Much more of a balance of yin and yang. And that's it. That's the morning routine that I do every day. Again, if this is something that you feel that you can handle because your level of fitness is okay, I would encourage you to do so. If it's something that you think might be a little bit too much for you, initially strengthen the areas of weakness, and then try to incorporate some of the movements. If nothing else, try the rotation of the joints. 3 for the neck, 5 for the shoulders and the hips, 8 for the knees. And just to show you why that's an important concept, the first stance that we did here, it's technically 3 of your own feet's width between the feet. This one is 5 of your own feet's width, the width of, or the length of one of your feet. There's 5 of your feet's length between. And this one, there's 8. So again, 3, 5, and 8. It's about building a rhythm. It's about building a rhythm with movement, and it's about building a rhythm of movement within structure. I've been doing this for many years, and I've had a lot of time to think about what this all incorporates. You're not probably going to get a lot of that tonight, and there are things that I'm still discovering about it every single day. So that's one of the other joys of doing this, is that it's a nice way to incorporate some of the lessons that I've learned in classes in the past. And since I'm no longer active in martial arts, it's something that I enjoy doing every day because it's a way to stay connected to that. But again, rotate the joints very gently, stretching very gently, and I hope that you were able to get something out of this. I guess that'll be it. Good luck with it, and whatever you do, I encourage you to do something on a daily basis. It's very important for your long-term health. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Edwin.
Thank you. Hope there wasn't too much movement there.
No, that was great.
I think we might still be recording, but I'm sure
Oh, okay. Well, you know what impressed me was the 3-5-8, right? And it seemed like, you definitely were working your way down the body.
Right, and so from the perspective of yin and yang, you start with yang, you're upright, and you move down to yin.
Right. Exactly.
Right? Again, there's that balance.
Yeah, and I could almost sort of feel like the energy sort of like being distributed through the body. I mean, you could.
Yeah. There's a rhythm, there's a sense of movement, there's a really very, it's a really neat way to prepare the body.
Yeah, and it also seems very efficient because, like you were mentioning, the position of the hand, the position of the foot, how that gives you a complete stretch.
Right.
With really very, not a lot of jerky, repetitive movement. So now how long does it take you in the morning to do your routine?
I can do it sometimes in 5 minutes if I'm pressed for time, but I like to relax into it. So I'll do maybe 8 to 10 minutes.
So so within 8 to 10 minutes, you are doing something so extremely significant to preserve your joints and keep your energy flowing throughout your body. That's amazing.
Quite often people will tell me I don't have time to do something, and I think to myself, yeah, you do. And so I'm hoping that this gives people the incentive to do something that's a very quick thing. It's total in the sense that it does everything in the body.
It does, yeah.
It does flexion, extension of the spine. It rotates all the joints. Lots of different movements, lots of very gentle movements, but also lots of movements that are going to strengthen the joints, the ligaments, the tendons, etc.
Exactly. So, if anyone who's watching is interested, you can call the studio and perhaps we can get a tape. Now, you have a website, Edwin.
I'm going to try to put portions of this on the website, or maybe do some sort of, we'll see how it comes out as far as the...
well, and we'll see if we get calls. Perhaps we can, maybe get something even more specific and get it distributed to people. Because I'm telling you, I'm anxious to start trying and making it part of my morning routine. So once again, Edwin, it was a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And that's all for tonight. Thank you for tuning in to Healthy Alternatives.